Hello, and welcome to Replay Value. Part of me hopes that anytime I release a video analyzing why a narrative does something well, people are encouraged to give it a try. Some of my favorite comments are when people tell me that they were inspired to watch a series because of a video I made on it, whether that's Kekai Sensen, Hyoka, or the series we're talking about today, Starlight. I look back on that first video I made regarding Starlight really fondly. Sound design is something I think that is generally overlooked by most viewers, and frankly, that episode of Starlight was fantastic. So when it came to the finale and I saw so many visual callbacks to that first episode, I was ecstatic. Not only because the show ended well, or that I noticed those visual callbacks, but because the meaning in those visual motifs had evolved over the course of the show and how the parallels between the first and final episodes were so thematically rich. So today, get ready for Karen, Hikari, Tokyo Tower, and Falling, because we're talking about how visual parallels are powerful. Falling in Starlight is so much more than just a standout visual moment. It carries a ton of meaning with it, not only in that the act of falling has a ton of literal meanings, but also in how it informs us as to the characters' relationship and personalities. But to start with the obvious, passive falling is indicative of failing. That kind of descent from a great height implies disaster. It's also a return to Earth, which is what happens in the first episode when Karen snaps back to reality after falling asleep. Compare this to Karen jumping into the fray, the active decision. This is also falling, but it's much more akin to a dive or an entrance, breaking into a new realm by choice. It doesn't have the same melancholic feeling to it as the passive fall. This is an exciting change. Whereas there's a sense of danger in falling backwards where you can't see what's coming, falling forwards allows you to anticipate and have a sense of control. I also referenced in that first episode that there's a temporal aspect as well. Backwards is a look towards the past, so Karen thinking about her initial promise versus forward to the future, taking action to keep that promise. So just in terms of directionality, there's a huge difference in the way that falling is treated, but it also tells us a lot about the two girls. Hikari pushes Karen away. Initially in the first episode from the top of Tokyo Tower, and then again in the 10th episode to win the competition. At first, we don't have the context for that first push, but it's clear that not only is this some great foreshadowing, it's also consistent with Hikari's character. We learn in episode 8 that Hikari decided to go no contact with Karen, creating space between the two, metaphorically pushing her away. This wasn't for cruelty's sake or an attempt to be mean, it was Hikari's best way of fulfilling her promise to Karen, that they would perform Starlight on stage together. In episode 10, when she pushes Karen away, it's for Karen's sake, that she'll be able to maintain her shine even if Hikari wins, knowing that Karen wouldn't be able to make that decision and steal everyone else's shine. Even in episode 12, Hikari uses her string to keep Karen at a distance, not wanting her to get too close. As she said earlier in the episode, she would wind up missing Karen. And that would end the stage of fate, the only thing preventing Karen and the other girls' shines from disappearing. Hikari builds up this space because she wants to, at first, make sure that she'll be able to keep her promise to Karen. And then later, because in order to protect Karen, she needs to prevent herself from acting selfishly. Karen, on the other hand, is always looking towards Hikari, whether it's falling away from her or jumping in towards her. When Karen is able to be active, she's moving towards Hikari, wanting to close the gap between the two of them. She doesn't care about having achieved the highest height unless she's there with Hikari next to her, achieving their promise. The dialogue between her jump in episode 1 and 12 is identical. Karen's motivation is always and has always been about becoming a star with Hikari, not becoming a star, period. So in episode 12, when Hikari is attempting to keep Karen at bay with the string, Karen thrusts her sword down to try and keep her place near Hikari, begging her to return. This kind of headstrong and slightly reckless behavior, which jumping into an abyss below is certainly consistent with, is what we've come to expect from Karen, especially when it comes to Hikari, where reason seems to fly out the window. And frankly, the pattern should come as no surprise. Just as Karen is given a crown because Hikari views her as someone to protect at a distance, like a knight guarding a royal, Hikari is given the stars because Hikari is the embodiment of Karen's shine. Speaking of embodiments, I doubt I'm blowing anyone's mind when I state that Tokyo Tower is the embodiment of Hikari and Karen's promise. There's a reason why it shows up all the time, though sometimes it's only in slight relation to the promise. like representing the pinnacle or the top spot. Tokyo Tower is where the promise was made and reaffirmed. It's the central hub for our flashbacks to the past between the two girls. Its verticality makes it perfect for the allusion to scaling a mountain, and as discussed in that initial Starlight video, it's striking both in audio and visual terms. The initial push off the tower, foreshadowing to the push in episode 10, is Hikari abandoning performing Starlight with Karen. Notably at that moment, neither of them are at the top. They still have a ways to go over the next 9 episodes. But Hikari has accepted that for Karen to be happy, they'll never be able to do Starlight together. The fall down the tower reminds Karen of her promise, and of course the initial fall is later used for Karen's rebirth. No matter how many times she falls down, she'll get back up again, which is perfect because after descending for the final time, we have the first rising in the show, as Karen's stage lifts back up after her fall. Even though Karen doesn't quite reach Hikari's level with the rising stage, Tokyo Tower is the bridge Karen needs to be able to reach Hikari and stand with her. Karen holds true to the promise even in the face of despair and is able to break the tragedy of Starlight and give it a happy ending. Visual parallels are able to create callbacks to previous events and remind us how much has changed or create entirely new understandings of those past moments in the context of the new ones. Some might claim that the recycling of animation is done to save money or manpower, but frankly, some of the best work comes from those kinds of limitations. And it certainly doesn't change how falling is recontextualized or how Tokyo Tower's symbolic meaning evolves over the course of the show. Starlight is a phenomenal show that has layers to peel back, whether it's the revues themselves or the nature of participation in a narrative, and yes, even how we can frame falling to deepen our appreciation for our characters. Hope you enjoyed. Leave a like and comment with your thoughts, subscribe for more videos, and follow me on Twitter for my live analyses and future projects. Link in the description. We'll be back real soon with another video, but until then, thanks for watching.